Hi, welcome to the Neshamos podcast. We at Neshamos are on a mission to promote mental and emotional health within our community. Among the many ways we do this is by empowerment through education. This podcast is where we get to listen to personal experiences of those who have been affected by mental illness, the pain, the struggle to get better, and today, by the grace of God, have emerged with a message of hope and healing. My name is Moshe Chanan. I am a grateful addict in recovery, and I am a certified life and addiction recovery coach. I'm here to encourage vulnerability and allow for hope to emerge from the internal journeys we share. Please join me, hear the stories of these heroes, and know that you are not alone. Welcome back to the Neshamos podcast. Today we are honored to have Dovid Zane Braslawsce. Dovid grew up in Beaver, Pennsylvania, and currently lives in Crown Heights. He learns at Hadar Torah and runs a self-defense and fitness training program for men and boys. He's here to share his story growing up rebellious, anxious, lonely, and frustrated. Some might call it ADHD, although he's never been diagnosed. Today, Dovid is able to channel his energy for productive things and live disciplined and purposeful. Thank you, Dovid, for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see you. So I guess I'll start back when I was a kid. I was always expressing myself more physically. Whenever I found myself worked up, it was always the easiest way for me to release that energy was always through physical means. I'd never remember it, but my parents would relate how whenever I would get temper tantrums, I would run over to a wall and just start like hitting my head off the wall a little bit. And that's how I would handle it. So it's something I would have to express in a very physical way whenever I was frustrated. And they noticed that pretty early on. I even was like one of those kids that was on a leash growing up as well. Because anytime my parents went out, if they weren't constantly on top of me, I would be wandering off and doing something else. I would always be in somewhere else talking to somebody, following a dog, looking at a butterfly, like a squirrel, like almost the havdil, like a dog, like you take out on a leash on a walk and it's just like running after this, running after that, and it's like jerking you every which way. That was sort of my energy in the way that it was like hardly able to be contained within my body. And I always felt like it was like running every which direction. And it led to also other frustrations in my life. I found it very difficult to express myself through words. I went to see a therapist at a pretty young age. When I was like in third grade or fourth grade, I started seeing a therapist and getting anger management issues for a number of different reasons when my parents divorced. And so a lot of incidents happened at school. Not a lot of incidents. One incident, I bit a kid at school in third grade. It was during playtime. It was cleanup time. At that point, I was still drawing, and he was like, "We have to clean up." And I was like, "No, I want to finish my drawing." And he took my paper, and as he took it, I grabbed his hand and bit it so he would let go of my paper. Yeah. No one was really happy about that, so I started taking anger management classes and eventually seeing a therapist. And one of my least favorite things was to have to sit in a room for an hour doing nothing but talk to one other person. Now I'm doing it voluntarily here, but this is many years later. It's something enjoyable now but it wasn't easy. It was like something I had to work on and develop, like being able to just sit down and talk and be open with somebody is like so difficult for me, because one of the only ways I knew how to express myself in a way that would actually get out that energy that was contained within me was for me, physical means was like the best channel for me to let it release that energy and put it into a productive means and make it work for me in a way that I saw tangible, in a way I saw meaningful. Some people are really good at writing down. They journal every day their feelings. I do a little bit of journaling here and there, but I can't do it every day. For me, it's almost exhausting for me to do it. It doesn't make me feel better. If I feel writer's block or something, I get more anxious and more worked up. And for me, the physical release, and that's like kind of why I do what I do today, is because I just love it so much, and I feel so free and I feel the most release of anxiety and the release of pressure whenever I'm expressing myself through physical means or being able to be free with my body. It's very like Bruce Lee-esque, where you're like, be like water, my friend. It's if you're in a cup, you mold to the cup. If you're in a bowl, you mold to the bowl. But this idea of being able to do physically all the things that I want to do in order to express myself, it's easier for me. It's more apparent, and it's like the most direct way to release that energy. Like sweat equity is like one of my favorite things. If I knew I did something because I have this tangible evidence that something has been done. like an engineer when they build something, like, look, I actually built something, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe a software engineer, it's not as tangible. Like they're making a program and you can maybe use it on an interface and you can see how it's used, but it's not, it doesn't necessarily appear in a extreme physical way, or like a philosopher. Most of their work is while they're writing, and they can create masterpieces in terms of written down work. The majority of the work is supposed to be internal. They're doing a lot of like, how can I be a better person? How can I like affect other people in my environment in very positive ways through energy and things like that? Something that's not as tangible. Or even words, like speaking to somebody, a therapist, is not, the words, they disappear as soon as I'm done speaking them. So it's here and now it's gone. If I'm not pushing air out, it doesn't last afterwards, other than internally in somebody else's mind, the way that they're interpreting and taking in that information. It's not like a physical thing that we both touch and exists, even though we're not thinking about it or not speaking it into existence. It's still there.
So that's where you find it easy to,
for me, yeah, that physical
creativity.
thing that's like constantly there. It's wow, yeah. I like having that physical evidence where I feel the most release, and when I get that release out, I'm able to get back to that thing that we were talking about, the yechida, that more tranquil self-being. You exercise your demons. You work them out so that they're almost too exhausted to put up a fight anymore. And so when everything's like exhausted, they all just kind of want to sleep. And when they're all sleeping, you kind of get to that point of, oh, okay, none of the voices are talking to me anymore. There's no bickering between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. There's no voice in my head saying, no, you can't do this. No, you're not worth it. Whatever it is. And there's no, even on the other side though, because I've exhausted that positive energy as well, I don't hear also, hey, you're going to be the best in the world, or you're the greatest that like ever did. I feel good, but the reason I feel good is because everything is calm and nothing is forcing my attention towards it one way or the other. My attention can just be flat and be a little bit and get more to that kind
right. I'm imagining a boxing rink. After the fight is over, everybody goes home.
Yeah.
And somebody's just like sweeping the floor.
Yep. It's to be that generous. Super quiet after that big chaos. Yeah.
Right. I have so many questions just from what you said, but if we can go back a little bit. So what I'm hearing is that your parents saw that there's an obvious issue.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And then they're like, okay, we're going to try to help this kid. Let's get him into anger management classes. So
Sure.
first of all, what does it mean, anger management classes for a 7-year-old?
Yeah. So it was done through one of the school counselors. And mostly what we did was games. We played games that were like almost hidden exercises to talking about how can you express whenever you come across certain scenarios, how can you express your frustrations, or how can you work to a solution in a way that's going to be conducive for everybody, in a way that you don't feel like you have to explode in order to express yourself, that you explode in a way that harms others. So if I can't express myself in a physical way, because I also don't have the tools to express myself in a verbal or written or some sort of other way, if I can't communicate with somebody in that way, I can't get off my chest what is there. If the only way I know how to do it is physical, but the means that I'm in or the environment I'm in isn't conducive for that physical animation, if I hold it in to the point that I can't do anything, and the only way I know how to express this through physical means, it's very likely that the way that it comes out is in a very aggressive and explosive manner, because it's like
explosive was like hurting people, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I bit a kid, like in like
punching walls.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
What other ways did you quote unquote explode? The deal. Like, what did people witness when they said, "What the heck is going on?"
Like for me, like whenever I exploded, what would be?
Yeah,
it's hard for me to necessarily to describe, because I always would see red, like that sort of thing, and you kind of go blind with anger sometimes. It's just like, you've ever seen somebody suffocating or drowning and they like start thrashing everywhere. It's almost that, but there's no water. It's like literally I could thrash out. I could just start yelling or grinding my teeth or just pounding on something. I wouldn't yell necessarily at people too much. Sometimes I would just yell, but like in that almost like crying yell, like you're yelling and like it's so tight that like tears are also coming out, and you're like half between, like, you don't want to cry because you feel like crying is being like vulnerable, and you're mad, so you don't want to be crying whenever you're angry, because you're like, crying is crying is like kind of you associate with being sad and being like helpless, and because that's when you cry, you're kind of like giving you, like, it's that mega release of like total vulnerability. And when you're being like yelling and angry, it's very like you feel more in control. And I think that yelling and that crying are right on the cusp of almost the same thing of wanting to be in total control, and the realization that you're in control of absolutely nothing is like going from crying and yelling. Like yelling, because you're creating something at that point when you're yelling, you're causing this loudness and you're creating attention towards you, and things like that. So you're controlling the moment.
Right. Can I ask you to answer the same question?
Sure.
But I'm asking you to describe it from like how you experienced it back then without the knowledge that you have today.
Okay.
Right, because you did start describing it. It's super confusing. Powerful. The idea of like just seeing red, not remembering.
Yeah. It's very, very. At the time, it's confusing. Like I didn't realize what I'm doing in the moment that I'm doing it, and even after, I don't fully understand like what I had done before. It's kind of like this. Like a savage dog that bites at somebody, and then everyone's really, really mad at it after, and it like kind of whimpers. It's like, why is everyone mad at me? It doesn't understand. Like because it bit somebody, like literally, like it bit somebody, and everyone's mad at it. But it's like confused. Like it just wants love. It just wants to be loved and give love.
That's the way you experience it.
100%. Yeah. And so
there was shame after.
Yeah. You feel a lot of shame after, and guilt, and you feel like, oh, I don't want to do that again, but also at the same time you don't fully understand what you had done or why you even did it. So it's like it's very helpless. You feel very helpless, and because of that helplessness, it kind of creates an even worse cycle of, I don't know what happened, but I feel helpless, and because I feel helpless, I'm angry, and because I'm angry, I want to control more what's happening, because if I can control it, then I won't be helpless.
But I don't have the words to describe.
I don't have the tools in order to even control it or express myself in a controlled manner. Like it's going to come out of me either way, but which I never really realized. Like this energy is coming out of me. I can't control the energy that is being released through my body. My body is a Kali, and it's totally controlled by Hashem, and any energy that comes out is totally from Hashem. Being bittul, that idea is like very, very releasing, but also at the same time. But also
you didn't have this language. You didn't have these ideas.
I didn't have the tools, even physically. I couldn't control myself physically, so whenever I was expressing myself physically, it was also very dangerous. So because I connected to that physical release so much, me being able to control how I release it and in which manners I release it, and in being able to control myself in that way is really, really meaningful and impactful, and changes like everything I can do in my life, the relationships I can have in my life, how vulnerable and open I can be with other people in my life, and all of that. Because now I don't have to be afraid of, oh, I'm going to explode because I want to say something or I want to express something, and I feel stuck. I feel like I'm boxed in. I feel suffocating. And the more I want to express it, the more I feel suffocated, because
just creating more and more tension in a small space.
Exactly. And when you look in like jujitsu, it's like these sort of muscles go with jujitsu perfectly, because if you freak out in jujitsu, the more tense you are, the more likely you are going to get hurt, the more likely you're going to get choked out, more likely you're going to have a limb broken, different things like that. And the more relaxed and go with the flowy you are, the more fun it is, and the more relaxed and releasing it is, and the more in control you actually feel. So when you're like, just, okay, it doesn't matter if this person's really tense rolling with me, I can be nice and relaxed and go from position to position, because I know how to control my body. I know not to jerk really hard when they pull on this. I know to let my hand go that way. Kind of, I understand what opportunities lie in each area that I'm in, even though this person's totally on top of me, or say he's choking me, for example. Like one of the big things is like when you feel like you're choking, one of the main things you want to do is freak out, flail your limbs. You feel totally helpless. Someone has their arm around your neck. You can't breathe. You can't get out. And understanding like that when you're in those scenarios, when you start to learn, there's tools to get out of that. There's a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, grab the wrist, pull down, turn to face him. If you stay calm and you can go through those steps and sort of work out that way and have control over your reactions, have control over your body, have control how you're expressing that you're anxious and that you're scared. But you can still go through the steps, because you're scared and you're anxious. It's going to happen no matter what. But if you have the tools to express yourself and walk through those steps, then it's not, even though you're afraid, it's not scary. You're not also not doing nothing, which is like the worst thing you could possibly do, is do nothing and do nothing and do nothing until either one, you pass out because someone's choking you, or you freak out and you start punching people, kicking people, and really cause a harm to those around you or even yourself. So
one of the reasons why I was inspired to interview you is because just right now I'm seeing it, because as the way you're describing the physical activity of jiu-jitsu is precisely how somebody can work on their emotions.
Yeah.
Your emotions can have you in a headlock, and they could be choking you, and doing nothing is like depression and what it will lead to. And anxiousness is like intensing and trying to fight everywhere. Let me try this, let me try that. But like slowing down, right? And observing, and then seeing there are small steps, one step at a time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can get out. But it's helpful to have somebody train you in that.
For sure. Yeah.
So anger management classes for you. I'm just going back
Sure.
to the way it began. So anger management classes for you were in school. You're 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
That's happening at school. Anything else aside from the anger management classes? What's happening at home?
So at home, my grades were slipping also in school. I was like, the first time I was getting like C's and things like that in classes. I was mostly A, B, smart kid. At home, my parents are in the midst of a divorce. It's not a clean divorce, unlike most divorces. Lots of fighting. My dad is someone who also has done a lot of work on himself, and our relationship has developed immensely over the past 5, 6, 7 years. At the time, I could see a lot of the things in myself I see in my father also, which is really good. And I'm very grateful that my parents actually got divorced, because it forces me to take a step back and be able to look at my parents in a more objective way, and also have my other parent, each parent criticize me that I'm like the other parent, and I actually get to see that in myself. Oh yeah, I am like that parent in this way, and I am like this parent in this way. I don't have to be that way. I'm reacting because this is what I know and things like that. But at the time, I was extremely frustrated, confused. I remember crying a lot during those years, especially early on, because your parents are getting divorced. They're totally separate. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. I had one parent living on one side of town. Literally, my other parent moved on like almost the same exact street on the other end, exact opposite end of town. And I'd be one Monday, Tuesday be at my mom's, Wednesday, Thursday be at my dad's, and it'd be every other weekend. I'm switching back and forth. And there'd be a number of times where I'd walk to the wrong house and it would be locked because the parent isn't there, because he's not expecting his kids to be home. And I'd be like waiting outside, being like, well, it's locked. I'm just waiting for him to get home. And then like,
At what age?
it was like 3rd, 4th grade, like it was right around there. Yeah, fourth grade maybe. Yeah, 5th grade.
So you're walking home from school then?
Yeah, we live in a small town of like 6,000 people. Everyone walks home from school. It's not such a crazy thing.
I'm just trying to imagine that experience.
Yeah. Oh well,
coming to a house.
Yeah,
and
sure.
there's nobody there.
And my brother's in a different grade, or he'd always be going to friends' houses. So I oftentimes would be walking home alone. Or we even had different schools. Whenever you got into 6th grade, you'd be in a totally different school that you'd actually have to take the bus to. It was easier for me to take the bus to school because it was. I knew which bus would take me which house, and I just had to get on that bus. It was super easy. And but when I had to walk home, it was a relatively big schlep with a big backpack full of all my books from school, because we don't have lockers at the time. When you're that young, you don't keep your books in a locker. You carry literally all your books with you to school. You carry them all the way home, and anything that you have homework in. And so if I would end up at the wrong house, and I don't have a cell phone or anything like that, so I'd be at the wrong house, and I could be there for a half hour and an hour just kind of waiting before I realize, oh crap, it's Tuesday, it's not Wednesday. I'm at the wrong house. Then I have to walk all the way to the other side of the house, haven't eaten anything yet. And it's like, it can be frustrating a lot of the times. It's like...
Are you downplaying it?
I don't think I'm downplaying it. It was extremely frustrating as a kid. I felt very hurt. I felt very attacked almost as a kid. Like, it seemed unfair, and I felt cheated in a lot of ways. And I felt like it was an unnecessary burden in my life. Like, this is something that I shouldn't have to go through. Like, why is this something that I have to do? Like, why do I have to end up at this wrong house? Like, every couple of weeks, I'm like, end up at the wrong house because of this weird schedule that I now have to keep, and going to one place now, one place to the other, constantly going from here and there. And then for a kid who was already struggling with like structure in his life, having this extra chaos didn't necessarily help. And things like karate, which I was in at a very early age, things that my parents saw that I enjoyed, being very aggressive, because I think for me it felt the most freeing. I felt like most in control whenever I was able to give all of my aggression out and basically express all those things.
How did the idea come up in the first place for you to get to
go to karate? That's a good question. I really don't know how it started. Maybe it's because I was into like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something like that, like some TV show, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'd love to check that out, or Power Rangers and stuff. Or maybe they saw that I was constantly like wrestling and fighting my brother and things like that, which around here in Crown Heights, you see that a lot. A lot of brothers are like always like, I hear moms all the time, oh my gosh, you work with kids. Like my kids are always constantly fighting. Like they need a place that they can go and like, just get it out of their system and go and fight and be done and then come home and be like relaxed and chill. And I think for me as a kid, my parents also felt probably a very similar way. They see I'm like running around doing all these things and like very physically active with all the stuff, and it probably was hard for them to even deal with. And they're like, we just need him to get out of the house for an hour and just go get rid of all that energy and then come back to us exhausted. We'll give him a shower, let him eat, go to bed, and be like, we can all be more relaxed because
so you started karate while your parents were still living together?
I did start while they were still together, yeah. And then I stopped a few years after when I got a GameCube. So when I got a GameCube, I was like, I wanted to quit karate because I wanted to spend
it's a video game.
It's a video game, yeah. And we had Super Mario Smash Brothers, and I loved that game, right? It's like one of the most famous games ever.
Okay.
And I like wanted to spend all my time. I was like tired of spending my time after school at this karate place, and I felt more joy when I was playing this video game than I was doing this karate thing. But it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything else. I also was into other sports, baseball, soccer, football. I got into football when I was in 3rd grade for the first time, and like way more physical, like active type things. Karate is physical and active, but I would say football is probably a little bit more hands-on and rough. And for me, I think that was more of what I was looking for. I was in a tournament, in a karate tournament when I was a kid, and I became friends with this girl that I was standing in line with. We're both like young kids, and it turns out that we ended up having to fight each other in the tournament, and she crushed me because I was like having fun and trying to have a conversation while we were fighting, and she would just slap me in the face, kick me in the head. And it was like, my parents made so much fun of me. They're like, what were you doing? You're like talking to this girl while you're in a fight. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's like we met in line. We were friends. Yeah, it was really funny. But I think that they also saw that I was aggressive, but it was never, what's the word?
Angry?
I was angry, but I was aggressive and angry, but I was never malicious. Was never malicious. I never wanted to hurt anybody.
You just wanted to get the energy out.
And like in terms of football, what's really nice about football is everyone's wearing a helmet. Everyone's wearing a mask. You can't see anybody's faces. It's very easy to dehumanize people whenever you can't see them. And so I even wrestled when I got into high school, and I enjoyed wrestling because it was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my entire life. Having to control another human being, having to like have will, because Tanya talks about this even, like this is really what it comes down to. Oftentimes skill takes you only so far. It's just not giving up. And there'll be times, and I never realized that was the case until I was in San Diego years later with my jiu-jitsu coach, where he's a tough guy, like really tough guy, really hard background. He was never a drug dealer, but he would rob drug dealers. That was like his parnasa. He would rob drug dealers. And really tough guy, used to be a bouncer, and he's shorter than me, but like jacked up. And when you roll with him, it feels like you're rolling with a gorilla, and he's just like throwing you around, and you're just like, and so we'll be rolling around, and at one point I'll be tired and I'll give up, and he can sense it right away, and he'll call me out on it while we're rolling around. He goes, "Don't give up. You're not done yet. You're quitting. You're quitting right now. I can feel you quitting." And then you're like, yeah, I do have energy. I can go another 2 rounds probably. Like I'm giving up because I feel like I'm being defeated, and I feel like there's no hope. And like, why am I not fighting? Why am I giving up on myself so fast?
You quit before you lose.
Yeah, exactly. And so in wrestling, it really, really, really brings that idea out. And that, you see that in all aspects of your life. This idea of I feel kind of defeated, and I'm just kind of like going to lay down. Even though you want to keep doing it, you're enjoying it, but like the opponent that you're facing right now, you lose hope almost when you're facing it. And in wrestling, if you lose hope at any point, you start losing almost immediately.
So at what point, I like these ideas, and I'm also paying attention to somebody who's struggling emotionally, and he'll push himself. At what points is it unhealthy?
Yeah.
To be pushing?
100%.
And like, how do you gauge that, and what do you do?
So in something like wrestling or jiu-jitsu, you can push yourself really hard and never get hurt too bad, which is really amazing. If you're smart about it, if you're tense and tight and you try to push yourself, that's when it becomes really unhealthy. So there's healthy ways you can go. If it's in a healthy manner, you understand that you're not being tense, you're not being hard, and you can go for a very long time and keep wrestling and never get hurt.
So you're saying there's specific environments of where it's healthy.
Sure, 100%. Yeah, always space and time are things that we're constricted to being in these physical bodies in this physical area.
How do you translate that into your emotional journey?
Sure.
How do you know when it's okay? I have to tap out. This is not healthy for me.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, over the period of years, I've picked up on more of my triggers and things that like really start to set me off, and I can feel a lot more now whenever I'm starting to dip into a more depressive state or a more anxious state. And I have tools that I have developed and used and tried a million different things, meditation practices and breathing exercises, yoga and physical expressions in order to re-enter myself and realign. Talking to people, I usually call my mom in my mashpia. Those are like the two people I go to. If I start to feel like I'm giving up and I'm tapping out and I can't handle things, I have a couple of trusted sources that I know that they have my best interest in mind, and I can go to them and tell them exactly what I'm going through and say that I don't know what to do. Like, I'm totally lost. I need to give up, or I'm feeling down, or I don't know what to do next. And the hardest part of that relationship is whatever they say, I do. That's one of the hardest things. Like, I'm giving over enough trust to you that I think that you know better than me what to do for me right now. Because if I try to make a decision for myself right now, I'm not in the right place. Like you said, I'm too much. I need to tap out. Like, if I need to tap out, it means I'm totally bittul. I'm crying. I'm giving over myself totally to some other being, a higher being, whatever it is, or somebody that I trust more. And for me, that's my mom and my mashpia. I'll call my mom crying, and I usually don't go more than a week without calling her just at all, just to talk. It took a long time. It took many years to develop that relationship with my mother that I could get to that point. Same with my mashpia, that I would trust them enough or give over, not be afraid literally to give over my deepest, darkest things that I've ever done. I could tell them and know that there's no judgment, and know that they're going to take that, not look at me any different, but look at me even with more love and be like, oh my gosh, I love you more, and I want to know. They don't, not that even that they want to know, but they're immediately going to give me something that is going to help me grow from that experience and be a better person. Because
I wonder what takes more trust, and perhaps the same or even not related, but there's one which is trusting the person that they'll keep your information sacred and private. And the second thing is trusting the person that whatever they recommend that you do, you'll do it, and it's going to be the best thing for you.
For me, I think the latter is the harder part of that. Telling somebody something it's actually, I think it's much more easy. It's much easier than taking upon yourself to do that thing that they're asking you to do because of it. Or they're saying like, hey, I think this would be good for you. You should do this. And
being willing to do it even though you don't understand or you may not agree with
exactly. Really being like, whenever I put tefillin on, sometimes people are like, oh, it's super deep and meaningful and it connects you to Hashem. And sometimes I want to look at it like maybe it's the total opposite. Maybe I'm doing this ridiculous thing only because Hashem said I should do this ridiculous thing. And it's because I don't want to do it. There's no reason that I should ever want to wrap these leather straps. Like, it doesn't make any sense to do it. And for me, logically, even if you tell me all the deepest and Kabbalistic things about it, in the end, to me, it's still leather and parchment. Like, that's what it is. And physically, and I'm making myself do it and stand here for an hour and say these words, and I'm doing it even though it's not necessarily what I want to be doing. If my body wants to eat food or go get on Twitter or Instagram, or I want to be doing something, I could be doing a million other things with my time that you could consider to be more productive, but I'm standing here for an hour and literally saying these words, and I know what these words are. These words are saying this higher being that I'm thankful to you, and I'm asking you for these things, and I want you to give me health, and I want you to give me things, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm just gonna have a podcast with Hashem for an hour, like 3 times a day, 2.5, 3 hour podcast with Hashem. It doesn't make any sense, but like when I'm able to make myself do that is another form of like discipline. Like, this is me showing like I'm giving myself over. Even though I don't understand it, I don't know why I'm doing it, but I know that someone I trust, someone I love, and someone I know has asked me to do this thing, and I trust that it is for the best that I should be doing this thing. So same by my mashpia, same by my mom. If my mashpia says, hey, like, you should read this, or I want you to take this time to do this specific thing, I'll go, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Something just came to me, and I'm noticing that when you were really young, your greatest need was for control.
Yeah.
And here you are doing the exact opposite, which is completely trusting. So the thing that you were craving, perhaps the thing that you were craving most, that you were hoping would happen through controlling, happened through trust.
Yeah, letting go.
Letting go.
100%.
Yeah. In the 12-step program, they say a lot. You let go to get a grip.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust the system.
Yeah. So whoever's listening, I mean, David, you didn't grow up frum, right?
No, not at all. I'm not religious. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just share with us a little bit of it? Because even when you were describing like the idea of showing up to the house, right?
Yeah.
And saying this is so not necessary. Like I'm imagining myself being in that spot and then saying, God, seriously?
Yeah, right.
Is this really necessary? By turning, but did you have that? Like what was that like for you?
I never really had a relationship with God. I would at least consider myself for most of my life like this good person. I was what you would say, what people term now as a cultural Jew in a lot of ways. Like I love the cool stories. I never really believed that there was God per se, but I believed in being a good person and I really enjoyed the food and the Pesach Seder that we would have and things like that. But I'm from a very weird intersection of Jewish identities because I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere, 6,000 people, one Jewish family. It's my family. We're the only Jews in the whole family and the whole town. So for me, a lot of my identity of being a Jew in my town was no one else is, and that's what makes me a Jew. Everyone else has this Christmas and Easter and all these other things, and I don't. And then I have Pesach and Hanukkah and things like that.
And you guys didn't celebrate any of the other...
I would go to my friend's house on Christmas Day and spend the night there, Christmas Eve, wake up and open presents. Sometimes the other parents would have presents for me and stuff like that. And I would do that with the kids, go have a nice ham meal the night before and things like that with all their families and stuff. I would do all of that sort of stuff. And all my girlfriends growing up were all in my hometown. They're all Christians. So I would go there for Easter Sunday and we would go to church together and things like that. So I ended up knowing a lot more about Christianity than a lot of Christians do in the end. But I also had this, went to a reform school growing up, a reform synagogue. And so we'd go Sunday school. In my home was also very weird because it was a very traditional home. So we're Jews in the middle of nowhere with no other Jewish families. But we're a traditional family ourselves. So my grandparents are their parents are fresh off the boat, escaped the pogroms in Romania, went to Moldova. My bubby was Czechoslovakian, and I'm saying Bubby and Zadie, they spoke Yiddish. They wanted us to call them Bubby and Zadie. They were super big on Jewish pride and you're a Jew, you have to remember you're a Jew. My Zadie would come to my football games and yell Begrovim, which means to bury them. Yeah. Yell it out in the stand super loud and everyone look at him like a weirdo. It was the best. So yes, and we had separate dishes and separate sinks and separate dishwashers growing up. I had an upshurnish. Yeah, we would light candles and then we would drive to shul every Friday and Saturday. And it was one of my favorite things was going to shul. Growing up, it was that community and things like that. So it was very weird to be...
But if you grew up in a town, you would leave the town to go to shul?
Yeah, so the shul was about a half hour away. The closest reform shul was about half hour away. Yeah. And then my Bubby and Zadie also had a synagogue that they would have services. By the time I was even bar mitzvah, that shul was basically dying out. They would have services on the high holidays and maybe a couple other holidays here and there, but they wouldn't have regular services. So we would sometimes drive 45 minutes the other direction into Ohio where my grandparents were and have services by them and the couple other of Jewish people who were left in that town. That it kind of died out after the steel industry left. So where I'm at, the steel industry had a huge impact on all those areas. So when the steel industry crashed in the late 80s, mid 80s, it was the towns went with them and we were the leftovers of what was there. Like I said, I grew up in a small truck stop town in the middle of nowhere on the river. So it's how it is. So
there was weird, no looking up to the sky and saying,
God, why?
Where are you?
Maybe now and then, but my relationship with Judaism was always a community and family. It was never a relationship with God.
Interesting.
Not until much later in my life. So whenever I started doing this thing called Dillertine Fellows, which is a really, really amazing leadership program that's international for Jews all over the world, and they all have sister cities in Israel, and 20 teens from each city are chosen to be a part of this 15-month-long leadership training program. And it was the greatest thing I've ever done, and probably one of the most impactful things I ever did as a kid.
How old were you?
The first time I joined, I was 16. 15 or 16. So it's for like people in 10th or 11th grade. 9th, 10th, 11th grade are the kids, and then they have people who are in 11th or 12th grade who've gone through the program already. They become like the counselors. So they choose 2 people to be counselors every year, and 20 teens from around the city. And then same in Israel, and then you do all this crazy programs and the exchange stuff. You go to Israel for a month and a half, sometimes 2 months, and then the Israelis come here for 10 days and you do a Shabbaton. It's really amazing. But they do this Jewish-infused leadership program, and everything you do is all about developing leadership skills. What kind of leader can you be? What kind of different skills are there around it? How can you expand what your leadership type is? Maybe you're more like a coach kind of leader, maybe you're more like a lecturer kind of leader, or you're more like a therapist kind of leader, like a behind-the-scenes kind of like you want to talk to people and help them develop specifically certain aspects, whatever it is. Not necessarily motivating, more on the development side. Whatever it may be, whatever these different types of leader that you might be, and how to develop that out. And also we talk about Jewish identity. It was my first exposure-ship to Orthodox Judaism. The first time I ever wrapped tefillin, seen tefillin be wrapped. Even then I didn't understand what it was for a few years after. But I remember wrapping tefillin for the first time in Israel with another 16-year-old boy. It's not Chabad. He's just a Sephardi kid. He's Orthodox. He's wrapping tefillin. I happen to be walking by while he's davening Shacharis on this camp that we're in Israel with 600 other teens. At this point, it's like thousands. It's crazy. It's grown so much. And he like sees me walk by and he calls me in. He goes, "You want to put these on?" I was like, "That's weird. I don't know what this is." And he just put it on. I put it on. I say Shema, and he takes it off, and I walk away. And no impact, like deep spiritual change my life kind of thing. It just like it happened, and I walked away. But I realized in that program that I was not a Reformed Jew. I was really a conservative Jew, whatever that means. But we did this program one day where they laid out all these different aspects of like life in a Jew. And all the different views from Reform, Orthodox, conservative Jews. Mm-hmm. And then you would go and a different color would be assigned to each of you. And for each view, you would put that bead on like a bracelet. And at the very end, you'd see what color beads you had. And the majority of my beads ended up being like under this conservative Jewish mindset. And I was like, oh, I'm no longer a Reformed Jew. I'm now a conservative Jew. Whatever that means, right? All these labels that don't really mean anything. Because a Jew's a Jew. A Jew, whatever your opinion is, it doesn't matter. If you're a Jew, you're a Jew, and whether you...
Was there a close relationship in between your emotional state and your emotional work and recovery and healing with that part and purpose? And
I think so. I think it was just a matter of me connecting with the Yiddishkeit, with my Yiddishkeit in a different way. Like in ways that I felt like I couldn't connect to Yiddishkeit through Reform Judaism, I found like the more physical traditions, those are the things I always connected to, lighting candles, or maybe wrapping tefillin wasn't the main one for me right off the bat. Eventually it was. But like doing mitzvahs, giving tzedakah, or these physical things of whatever it was, I was like, wow, I really enjoy making kiddush and having this thing that I can do, this action-based thing was really important to me. And I found that in the more traditional Judaism got, and the more quote-unquote religious Judaism got, the more based in these physical actions a lot of things were. And so I felt myself getting more and more connected through these physical things and being like, oh, I enjoy having this kind of like structure in my life and being able to have these physical things that represent things that make me feel certain ways and help me connect to my people and feel like I have that purpose. And I think when I felt more purposeful and more intentional, my actions came out in a way that followed that purpose, in a way that followed those intentions. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with, they're all intermixed. Being able to have that development physically, being able to control myself physically is only a very small aspect of it. You have people who are absolute jerks who can do spinning roundhouse kicks and all sorts of things, but they have no control over their anger, but they have total control over their bodies. And so they are still expressing themselves in a way that is chaotic and hurtful to others and themselves. And having this growth in Judaism really emphasizes not growing just in one area. It says you should grow mentally, you should grow spiritually, you should grow physically. So you have all three aspects being touched upon all at once. So finding myself in a more traditional, I would say 100%. I felt my emotional development was totally correlated with this development of understanding of Judaism and community and purpose and intention and all these other things that came with it.
I'd like to come back to earlier. Was there anything beneficial? What did you find, if there was anything beneficial about getting into therapy in that time when you had to take the anger management classes when you're 7, 8 years old?
At the time, no, absolutely not. I hated every moment of it. I felt angrier going into therapy and leaving therapy than I was before. I felt more frustrated. I felt like I wasn't being heard. I felt like people didn't understand me. They're like, you just got to keep talking to this person. I'm like, I don't know this person. I don't trust this person. I don't like this person. You're paying them money. Like, I understood. I was old enough to grasp the idea. Like, you're paying him money to sit here and tell you things that I'm telling to him. Like, that doesn't, for me, it didn't fly. Like, I was like, I don't trust this person. I don't know who he is. And for me, I felt more hurt by that than I did without it. I think it was something that therapy is very much so a two-way street. And if you aren't willing to be open and use that as a tool, like, and you don't know how to even use it as a tool, like I didn't at the time, you feel more frustrated by it. So imagine someone, you ever see an old person, you give them an iPhone for the first time, they get super, super angry and throw it against the wall because they don't know how to use it. Like, that's the way I felt with therapy. I felt like this person has got this brand new piece of technology. I have no idea how to use it. And I felt angry. I felt more angry. I felt frustrated that I couldn't express myself by it. And I was forced to, like, I don't have any other means of communication. I have to use this. It's my only phone. Like, I have to use this, but I don't know what to do with it. And it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's stealing all my information and giving it to the government and stuff, right? So at the time, no, I really, really didn't enjoy it. When I was in college, I had to take therapy again because of another incident where in college I also struggled a lot, like probably more. I struggled a lot emotionally and mentally as a kid, but because I had a lot of structure and outside things in my life, keeping everything sort of in a track, nothing ever really came of it other than me like crying in my room or like getting frustrated and having a few anger explosions here and there. But like in college, when you have this, you have to do everything yourself now. You have to create your own Seder. You have to make your own schedule and keep on top of yourself. That transition was really, really difficult for me because the structure was something I needed, but I couldn't do it myself. I wasn't able to discipline myself in the correct ways or in healthy ways.
What did lack of discipline look like?
Depression and anxiety, both flip-flopping back and forth like crazy. So it wasn't a matter of being stuck in a depressive state or being stuck in an anxious state or being happy or being sad. It was the fact that I kept flip-flopping between the two so erratically and being unable to control. That was that lack of control again. Like I'm flip-flopping between being really angry and really happy and really sad and really depressed and then really joyful again. And then not having any consistency or that tranquility, that tranquilness, or that combination of two in the perfect amount. It kept being one extreme, the other extreme. And it's impossible to keep up physically with something like that, let alone emotionally. It's going to be just as draining and exhausting. And that sort of exhaustion led to that idea of, again, of no hope, wanting to give up. That same way when I was wrestling as a kid, that same exact feeling, like whenever I was going against someone who was bigger and stronger than me, and I felt like, oh, I'm going to give up. And then I just let him plow me over. It was a lot of that because I felt like I had to be so tense to fight against it. And then I'd get wrecked so hard the other way. And then I'd try to go back one side, then the other, then the other, then the other. And became suicidal when I was in college. It was rough. I did not enjoy a lot of my college experiences. I became way more religious in college also. And that was another thing that triggered a lot of the guilt and depression for me because when I first became religious and first learned about all these different laws and halacha of Yiddishkeit, I was like, I need to keep all of these. To be a good Jew, I have to do every single one of these things. I have to keep all the strictest kosher. I have to keep all of Shabbos all at once. And I white-knuckled it. And that's like when you squeeze something so tight, your knuckles turn white. So I wanted to hold on to everything all at once, and I became totally exhausted by it. And then I felt guiltier, and I felt more depressed because I wasn't doing the things that I made these ridiculous expectations of myself to do them. Even though I'd never done it my whole life, didn't understand it whatsoever, but I felt like I have to do all of these all at once in order to be a good Jew and to feel good about myself and to be happy to be who I was and all these other awful things. And so I became very, very depressive in college and very suicidal, and at one point even had a loaded gun to my own head. And at that point I went and got evaluated by an expert, and they said I didn't have to go to a hospital or anything like that. But after that incident, I started taking therapy.
Somebody found you?
Yeah, basically. So I had left like a disturbing message on a friend's phone, and they called a mentor of mine who basically called me, told me to come to his house, and he literally took the weapon from my hand. And like I was in my car at the time, and I drove to. He's like, where are you? I was like, I'm in front of my house, like with this gun. He's like, you need to drive to my house right now and give this to me. And he took it, and because he works for the school, he had to turn it into the school, and the school can't legally take it from me because I have a concealed carry permit. I have all the correct registrations to have it in the state that I'm in. I'm legally able to have it and everything, but they say you can't be on our campus with it. We're going to hold on to it until you graduate, because I was graduating that year, and they're like, when you graduate, we'll give it back to you. And I said, okay, cool. I was like totally fine with it because I had scared myself also. I'd never seen myself being able to get that close to being able to do something like that. And there I was. And I was really, really scared myself because I couldn't trust myself.
I'm wondering what that experience, right, of having so many expectations upon yourself in contrast to having so much energy and things turning red.
Yeah.
No,
Sure.
how are they related? Like, how does it go from
100%.
one to the other?
It's almost the same. It's almost the exact same. This idea of like frustratedness and feeling like you're going to pop and never getting that relaxation, like never getting down from that high. Almost like you're feeling this pressure build up, but there's no release. There's no pop. There's no like way to get it to come back down again. When you feel like you're so big and stuck against something, when I feel that way, when I feel like I'm stuck against something, I feel like the only way I can get out is by exploding. It feels like it's a balloon. I feel like a balloon being filled up and to the point like all the way full, stretch, and then pop is the only way to go because I can't release the air back. For some reason, the air won't go through the hole that's built to release that air. Like it's literally there to get the hole. The air can come out that way, but for some reason, I'm holding my breath and I'm not allowing it to flow. And because of that, the only way out is through a pop. And with my emotions and with that energy, it's the same way. I felt my energy wasn't being used in a conducive way that was aligned with what my values were, that were aligned with who I wanted to be in a way that was loving to myself.
What was at stake for you if you screwed up as a Jew? Oh, if I screw up as a Jew, then what?
I felt like a fraud. I would feel like a fraud. I was so worried about this image that I created for myself in my head. That this is what a good Jew is, and this is what a good Jew has to be.
But why did you have to be a good Jew?
I wanted to be a good Jew. That's a good question. I've talked with people about this too, and they're like, why do you actually care to be a good Jew? Is it for you? Do you care to even be a good Jew?
Well, I'm specifically talking about then when it wasn't that you were trying to be a good Jew. It's like you had to be a good Jew.
I had to be a good Jew, yeah. For me, I felt cheated out of what a Jew really was as a kid because of the education that I got around Judaism. And I felt like this was the way to make up for it. This is the way to get that real education. To know what a Jew really is, I have to do it. I have to do all these things. And I think this now I'm really going to
smiling because it sounds like this is called religious revenge.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not religious revenge. It's I'm going to become religious.
Yeah.
For revenge for all the people who taught me the wrong idea of what
exactly,
Judaism.
100%. It was all a rebelliousness. It was all based on the same thing the whole time. It was not healthy. Yeah.
Wow. That's dark.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really sad sometimes. A lot of people go to religion for the wrong reasons and go to anything like that.
I'm thinking about that day that you were in the car. And is there anything that he said to you that helped you feel hope? Is there any, like, where did hope begin?
Hope came to the reactions that happened immediately after. So immediately he's like, you need to call your parents. You need to tell people what happened, like where you're at right now. And so I called my parents and basically said, hey, this is the situation. This is what just happened. I was in the car, gun, school has it. Everything's fine. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm not feeling good. I'm not doing well. And they were like, my uncle who lived in Ohio, because I went to school in Cleveland, shout out to Case Western Reserve University.
To what?
Case Western Reserve University.
Case Western Reserve.
The school I went to. Yeah. And my mashpia is the shliach there. And really, really helped change my life as well. But what happened right after this incident in the car with the gun was I told my parents, and immediately my mom calls my uncle who lives in Ohio about an hour and a half, 2 hours from me. It's closer than they are. They're like 2.5 hours. Then he's a little bit closer. And they call him, and he says he's driving immediately to come pick me up and take me back to my parents' house. So he's going to come all the way an hour and a half to pick me up, drive me another 2 hours back to my parents' house, and then, or it wasn't even that. It was just to be with me. It wasn't even to take me home. This is what, my parents brought me Chipotle because at the time, like where I was like, I don't care about cautious or anything. I was like, they're like, we're bringing you comfort food. We're bringing you Chipotle. This is what you need. And I was like, perfect. So because they couldn't get to me as quick as he could, he drove like quick too, got there in an hour and came just to be with me, just so I wouldn't be alone.
Right. And like, I want to slow down on that and like really hone in on the significance of that.
Yeah. Wow. It was, really, really, really showing. Because I think oftentimes also when you justify killing yourself, it usually follows, oh, no one's really going to care too much. I'm actually going to be helping other people, whatever it is.
Totally the same words that came out of my mouth.
Yeah. You're like, feel like this burden because you feel that burden yourself so much. So you feel like I must also be that burden to others who are also experiencing me, because this is the way I'm experiencing me. It must be that others are also experiencing me in that same way, which is
especially if I have this evidence.
Yeah, 100%. So him just like being there was not even, I was like, my parents were there 30 minutes later. It wasn't even that huge of a time difference. If my parents had just said they were coming, it would have been just as good. But to have him also come just to hang out for an hour, just to talk to me, was like amazing. And it also happened to be, I don't know if it's hush about this, but my cousin who was in Bowling Green University, which is like also right nearby my school, like about an hour away, a little bit north of Ohio. Who is this uncle who came to me? It's his son. He had overdosed on pills that weekend, like a day before I had done this. And so they had already been up to that university the day before to deal with him and him trying to commit suicide as well. And he had to get committed to the hospital and get his stomach pumped and all these things. And there was just like, and no one knew about it. I was like, I didn't like, no one, usually like in the family, people tend to tell everybody like what's going on, and everybody was like really hush hush. No one had said anything about it. It was very like kind of pushed under the rug. And then when I had done it, like also tried to commit suicide, like a day later, everyone was like, okay, everything's out in the open now. Everyone's like, we can't hide this anymore. We're all going to be super open about anything that we're all feeling, any suicide or depression that we're all going through. And so like all these different people in my family had all started to come to surface. Like, hey, we're all dealing with a lot of this similar stuff, where it seems to be a family thing almost, that we have depression in the family. We have a lot of these things that we're dealing with. And my cousin and I, we even joked about it, which is my family's way of dealing is with a lot of trauma is humor. We deal with it in a very, very dry, humoristic way. So like I called my cousin up almost immediately and I was like, hey, like I heard you tried to kill yourself this weekend. And he's like, yeah, I heard you tried to do the same. And I was like, yeah, man, we should have called each other. We could have coordinated, done it together. At least we wouldn't have been alone. Which is like sick and dark, but we had a good laugh over it and it helped relieve a lot of that pressure. Like you're not alone. Like we're all there and we don't want to be there. We all want to help each other out. And thank God now all of us are pretty much in totally different spaces than we were then. And my cousin was kind of flipped. The one who had tried to commit suicide was back and forth for a bit of time, but now he actually just moved to England. He's doing very well, is in the music industry, and he's really like too smart for his own good in terms of that stuff. It's really, very sweet. But yeah, like it was really
so the uncle showing up, your parents,
everything that happened right after was what gave me hope. I had it there. It was there the whole time. It wasn't like I didn't have that support. It wasn't like I didn't have my family right there willing to literally give up everything and come to me as soon as I needed. But I'm mad at myself that I had to actually test the waters to like see that it was real and to see that it was there, and for me to recognize that it was something I needed and should have been aware of. But that thing that happened right after gave me all the reassurance of everything before. I was like, oh, I'm so I'm stupid for thinking that. But in a way, I'm like, how could I ever have thought that people wouldn't care, or that I didn't have a reason to live, or there wasn't people out there like
rooting for me. I can see how that can
easily
easily spiral you right back into depression. Like, I'm so...
I can't be stuck in that either. Yeah. I'm such
all I think about is myself. I'm not even paying attention how much people love me.
100%.
What was the progression of the work that you did? If that was just hope lasts...
not very long. So I started doing therapy right after that. And that was when I first started to give therapy a little bit more credit. And I was like, maybe I should get better at talking about how I'm feeling and being more open and expressive and letting people know where I'm at. Because when I do let them know where I'm at, even though I let them know where I was at in a very extreme way, they all reacted in the way that I needed them to. And there was that support that I needed. I found it, but they didn't know, so they didn't give me the support. So now I have to be much more expressive about letting people know that this is the support I need and this is where I'm at. And I can't tell people who are 2 hours away physically that I'm in need. I have to tell them I have to tell them through my words. I have to tell them through text. I have to tell them through a letter, carrier pigeon, however it is. But I can't like tap them on the shoulder and give them a hug. Like that doesn't exist. I can't just walk up to someone and give them a hug because that's what I need right now. Like I sometimes I have to just tell people like I'm feeling this way and I feel hurt, I'm feeling stuck, I feel helpless, and I feel like I just need a hug, and I'm like, that's the thing I'm missing.
What did your physical activities, your disciplines, physical, if I'm not mistaken, like you ended up going into MMA?
So
like,
right after this, pretty much I got an MMA.
So can you explain? I'm really ignorant when it comes to these things.
Sure. So
and specifically, if you can speak from the perspective of if there's somebody who relates to your story, identifies with your story, how can they utilize? Like, how does MMA help you?
Sure.
As opposed to just like doing it as a practice, like why?
Well, which is what I was. Yeah, this is perfect because right after this happened, it wasn't like I got better right after because I had all the support, and then I was like, oh, I'm feeling chippy and I'm like love life now. I was still upset about my life and where I was and the things that I had experienced right before that kind of led up to that was cultivating to that point where I felt like I was suicidal and wanted to kill myself and felt hopeless. So afterwards, I was still dealing with all this depressive things, but I was more active and dealing with it than I was before I was passive, and it led to me being popping and wanting to pop myself in the face. So now I was being much more active. I was seeing a therapist. That was one way, but I also, like I said, for me, talking wasn't making me feel totally good. Like I couldn't, when I finished therapy, I was still in my head. I would still be like having all these thoughts back and forth. It wasn't like, oh, I had this big relief. I've just talked to somebody for an hour about all my things. It was good to get it out and to allow me to see them in a way that wasn't just stuck in my head and in my brain. I could get it more physical and out, but I still needed that physical release. And so I started going to the gym a lot, and I started losing a little bit of weight, and I would go to the gym every day. I'd be in the gym for at least an hour, working myself to the point of exhaustion, like lifting weights, running until I like couldn't walk, or like I couldn't lift up the weight anymore. I wanted to exhaust myself to the point so that I could fall asleep at night without having to think too much, or that I could go on with my day without I'd be too tired to be thinking about all these different things that made me upset and made me depressed, and like what the things that I had experienced and what I wasn't doing about it and all these different things. I was really destroying my body really bad. And it just so happened to be one of my good friends got into a car accident and totaled his car. He wasn't hurt, thank God, but he couldn't drive himself to his MMA practices anymore. And he knew that I'd wrestled and I was into that sort of thing. And so he asked me if I will drive him to his MMA practices every day. And I go, yeah, for sure. I got time in the evenings. I'm just going to the gym and destroying myself anyway. I'd love to do a favor for somebody else and give me some purpose, even just driving him. And I drive him to his first day, and he's like, oh, you should come on in, check it out. Why not? And I was like, okay, cool, sure. So I come in, I'm going to take the MMA class, and I finished the MMA class, and I loved it. I had gotten my butt kicked by my friend who I was bigger than, and I was a wrestler, and I thought that I could destroy this kid. And my very first time like rolling around with him, he chokes me out like cold, like just puts me in a neck choke and just chokes me out. And I was like, oh my God, like I thought I would destroy you in a fight, and here I am like this kid half my size just choked me out. I was like, this is insane. I've never done anything like this in my life. But this guy half my size has just whooped me, and I thought that I could take anybody on. So I'm a strong kid, you know? And the coaches come up to me after class, and they're like, if you keep bringing him to classes, you can come for free. And I was like, done. Easy. That's the decision's made up already. I'm coming. I love this. I like had such a good day my first day because I got my butt kicked so bad. And I was like, I need to know how to do this. And I felt really good. And I felt that exhaustion that I felt after the gym was that same sort of exhaustion. But now I had this thing that I was learning. There was this purpose to it. Like with martial arts, it's different from like weightlifting, because weightlifting, you can learn more about anatomy and learn more about form and technique, but it only goes so far. Like you reach a limit. There is a limit. In martial arts, there's no limit, especially in mixed martial arts, because you can kick, because you can punch, because you can wrestle, you can do jiu-jitsu, you can meditate, you can work on being calmer, you can work on controlling your emotions more, which is something you can always do better, controlling how you think and what decisions you make, and against different opponents, how are you going to strategize exactly. And so there's constant development on yourself and on your mind. It's not just like a physical thing. You have to think, because there's an obstacle in your way that if you don't calculate correctly how to deal with it, you're going to feel it physically that you did it wrong. You're going to get hit in the face. So you get that instant feedback of calm down.
Literally instant feedback in the face.
Yeah. So it was very exciting for me, because it was like something I felt like I could do. And when I finished, I wasn't thinking about I wasn't thinking, at least I got an hour away from thinking about this other thing. I finished and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do this again. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to think about this further tonight. I can't wait to look up this YouTube video that understand this concept better.
So what about it? What about it captured you? And it seems like in a healthy way.
Oh my gosh, so healthy. It was, it gave me like this purpose. It gave me something to work on. And for me, that was like, I needed constantly something to physically do to feel good. I need something to physically work on and to strive for in order to feel accomplished in some way, in order to feel purpose. That's why I like doing mitzvahs for other people. That's why I like doing physical acts for other people. I love giving tzedakah. It's like one of my favorite mitzvahs. Because, what more can I give? It's literally my parnasa. I'm literally giving like the sustenance that Hashem gave to me. I'm literally giving it to somebody else. Like, how amazing is that? And I'm like, I can physically do it. I can see it happening in real time. And I like, wow, it's amazing. So I had these very similar feelings around this martial art, which was extremely difficult. I felt exhausted. It gave me that exhaustion that I was looking for, so that the voices in my head wouldn't be arguing and vying for my attention.
I'm just wondering if it was like an empowerment to create peace between the voices, or it was a numbing. Because it seemed like
you're right. The gym was a numbing because it was trying to just destroy it. And this was, you're right. That's a good way to phrase it.
It's creating dialogue between the two.
Yeah, you have to work with your mind. You can't, in the gym, I can shut my mind totally off. I'm just pushing this weight as hard as I can. I'm just running for as long as I can, shutting everything off, getting out of everything, disembodiment.
Strategically looking for red.
Yeah, exactly.
See red.
Yeah, 100%. Now if I see red, I get hit in the face. So I can't be...
Oof.
Yeah, exactly. If I freak out too hard, I get choked out. If I overreact one way or underreact one way, I have to be perfectly synced with my mind and my body, my spirit. I have to be calm and I have to be aggressive. I have to be gentle and firm. I have to be all these oxymoronic things simultaneously, which is, for me, the embodiment of Hashem in a lot of ways. It's like, how can you be Exactly. How can you be two totally opposite things simultaneously? Chesed and Gevurah. Malchus.
Calm and assertive.
Yeah, so that's the idea of salt. The idea of salt is two things at the same time. Salt, where is salt made? Salt is formed in damp areas, right? But the idea of salt is it soaks up water. It's dry. If you look at the Dead Sea, for example, except for humans, what other creature can live there? We're there, we bop up and down and we enjoy it, but no other creature can live in the Dead Sea. It kills it instantly, anything that goes in it. But it's in water, but it makes things dry. Like, it's something that'll kill you, but also gives things flavor. If you have too much salt, it's a bad thing. If you don't have enough, it's also a bad thing. You can't retain any water if you don't have any salt. Then you don't have flavor if you don't have any salt. But if you have too much salt, then you like get totally dried out, and it's like also a bad thing. The sacrifice is the only thing that is certain for every single sacrifice that we put on the Mizbeach, whether we eat it or it's just a burnt offering to Hashem, they all have to be salted. It's the only thing that every single thing that goes on the Mizbeach has to be salted, both sides. Just put salt. You have to have things that are two opposites. It's flavor and it's bitterness. So salt, if you use too much, it's very bitter. It takes it hurts your mouth even to have too much salt.
The lesson is that balance is the...
Exactly. Balance is the key. You have to have a little bit of salt is a lot of flavor. It brings out flavor even.
So
it's chesed and gevurah simultaneously.
Would you say that your discipline in martial arts was the source of that learning and that practice of finding the balance in between?
I don't know if it was the source, but it was definitely because of the source of the Torah. I mean,
what I'm saying is like your experience developing that idea in your life.
100%. Yeah. For me, it's the most true form of expression of Hashem that I'm able to have in my life outside of learning Torah. Which is basically all I do now with my life. I learn Torah in the mornings and I do this stuff in the evenings. And that's all I ever wanted to do, really, is have that balance between the two and be able to have this expression and have this expression of Hashem in the way that
How'd you end up in Crown Heights?
I ended up in Crown Heights because I was teaching at the Krav Maga Academy of San Diego. That's where I was living before I came here. And I had a friend who I went to college with who also became a Baal Tshuva right after me in college. And he just had a baby boy, actually. And he was studying at Hadar Torah. He went to my note because I went to my note when I was in college, and I came back and I told him about it. And I was like,
so you were saying you did the trip and then joined my yeshiva, or you went straight to the yeshiva?
For which time?
Oh, I didn't know. Okay,
when I was in
fair.
college, I went to yeshiva for the first time. I went to my note after my freshman year of college. When I came back, I started becoming religious. I was like, after my note, I felt this huge urge that like, this is what Yiddishkeit is. But like I said, it was like almost in a not so positive, it was not in a very unhealthy relationship in a way that I was like, I'm taking revenge because I'm showing everyone that this is really what I needed to learn as a kid. And
A lot of salt.
Yeah, a lot of salt. Too much salt, exactly. And then I like did too much too fast and not enough salt. So I got rid of a lot of it in my life. And then I was in this very depressive state. So when I was suicidal, I was basically not religious at all at that point. I was like totally fried out the other direction. So I had this one extreme one way and then the other extreme the other way. And so at the time where I was kind of floating between more religious and less religious life and trying to figure out what that relationship looked like for me in a healthier way. So when I was in San Diego, I'm going to shul every morning. I'm wrapping tefillin with the synagogue, keeping kosher most of the time, not necessarily all the time, keeping Shabbos most of the time, not all the time, but like really having that relationship with Yiddishkeit that is way healthier and a little bit more. Take it on your own terms, take it bit by bit, understand everything that you need to understand, and then take it on. And when you take it on, when I took something on, it would be like I'm taking it now. Now I have it. When I do it now, I'm not getting rid of it. Like it's not doing it. Like I'm not white knuckling anymore. I'm doing it because it feels good. I want it.
It's funny in my head. You're making me think everything in regards to like the disciplines that you have in martial arts. It's just like when you want to learn a new technique or a new thing, like you practice. Okay, once there's a certain point, you're like, okay, now I got it.
Yeah, 100%. Then you don't have to think about it so much. It's not like a big struggle. It becomes second nature. And of course I wash every morning. Like you don't like, I don't remember a time when I wasn't washing every morning. I don't remember a time when I didn't wrap tefillin. It just seems so natural. Like it's so second nature. It's like my just muscle memory going through it.
So coming here, was that like?
It was the kind of big jump. I came for like a yeshivacation, and that's my friend who I went to college with, who became Baal Tshuva after me, and went to my note. Eventually, when COVID hit, my note closed down, and he had to come here to Crown Heights because this was the only Baal Tshuva yeshiva that was open, was Hadar Torah. So he came here to study, and he was here for a while, and winter yeshivacation came around, and they call people up. They call up all their old friends, and they say, hey, you should come to yeshiva for 10 days, like come learn for a bit. And at the time I was like, it would be good for me. I haven't been to yeshiva in a little bit. I was like, I needed some yeshiva in my life. It was about time to get back to yeshiva. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll come. So I went from San Diego, flew across the country to New York, and came for 10 days during the yeshivacation program. And I was like, wow, it's really, really lovely. I really, really enjoyed being back in a Jewish community and Jewish environment that was so strong, and like having Jews everywhere and kosher food everywhere and so much chassidus and like strong Jewish pride and energy that I was missing in San Diego. In San Diego, I got a lot really good gashmias in San Diego. It's like Gan Eden Lahavdil. It's really awesome. I had amazing beaches, amazing weather, amazing food. It wasn't not kosher, but there's amazing food out there. It's right on the border of Mexico, and great martial arts. Great martial artists are out there, like UFC champions and stuff that I was able to train with on a regular basis. And it was really great. But this Yiddishkeit was like something so deep in me that I really, really, really wanted more than anything else. It felt more essential to my essence, and being centered and having that meaningful, purposeful life.
It's crazy because that seems, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm just curious about it, but that seems like the level you get to in your martial arts, where you're like, okay, physical stuff I got down, mental stuff. Now it's already, this is the deepest place where my work is. And if I could do this work, it's going to make its way into my actual fighting on the
100%. Yeah. And that was for me, for a long time, I was always struggling with, and that's probably a motif throughout my entire life. How can I get this idea involved with Yiddishkeit? How can I get this thing that I really love? And how does it fit in Yiddishkeit? Because Judaism, if I truly believe that Torah is true and that Judaism is true and all-encompassing of the truth, then there's no way that I can't do this thing in a way that's kosher. And so having a intentional purpose behind this violence makes it kosher in a lot of ways. Being able to control the violence and having mastery over the ways in which you conduct yourself in violent situations or in chaotic situations. You can have that controlled chaos, and controlled chaos is like the most powerful force, which is tohu, tikkun and tohu.
Yeah.
Taking this total chaos and going, okay, I'm going to take this energy and channel it in a certain direction. And Yiddishkeit and Chassidus is all about that. And so having the infusion of both of those in my life was super, super important. And I saw my vision as, even when I was in San Diego, I was like, I would love to go to yeshivas and be a part of the Seder in yeshivas, where students twice a week come and they learn how to use their bodies, they learn the physical chassidus, learn how to express themselves in a physical way, learn how to control themselves in a physical way, and be healthier, be more fit, and understanding that, like, on top of being self-defense and for the safety of the Jews, that's like a side point. For me, that's like a given. Like, I'm going to have to do that because I don't want that to be the reason, though. There's got to be a reason beyond because it's going to keep people safe. For me, martial arts was never like, I want to beat somebody up or I'm afraid I'm going to get beat up. I was always a big kid. No one ever tried to mess with me. I was always jacked up. I always looked kind of like beefy and stuff. No one ever tried to mess with me. I'm not like, I was never like a frail little guy that got picked on for that reason. So for me, martial arts was a way of controlling and expressing myself and being able to channel that energy in a way that was kosher, in a way that allowed me to not have that pressure and anxious, depressive state that brought me to a pop, that brought me to the radical, a way to express myself in a way that I could exhaust myself in a way that was healthy, that empowered both those voices, that called onto that voice that like criticizes me, which is also very healthy in a lot of ways. So it tells me like, hey, don't leave your hands down because you're going to hit in the face if you do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. It's okay, cool. And now I have this other thing that's telling me you can do it as well. And when I prove to myself over and over again, like I can do these things, or like I couldn't jump rope for the life of me. And now I can like double dodge, crossover, do all sorts of crazy stuff with the jump rope. And it was something, when I first started, I was like, I'm never going to be able to do this. I kept telling myself, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to be able to do this. But I also had this back little voice. I was like, you can do it. And then when I get 5 jumps in, I'm like, wow, I never got 5 jumps before. And there's that little voice going, yeah, you can do more. You can do more.
5 jumps in one?
No, not 5 jumps in one go around, but like I could be 5 in a row. Like I could jump 5 ropes in a row. Like when I first started jump rope, I could barely even get 2 or 3. I'd be 1, 2, 3, get caught on my feet. 1, 2, 3, get caught on my feet. Make sense? No?
Just like rope jump?
Like regular jump rope. Yeah, I couldn't do it. yeah. Okay. I was really bad at it. Yeah. And then I got it's my favorite thing. I love it. Now I love it. I hated it also in the beginning. It was like exhausting. I'd rather run. Now forget running. I'd rather jump rope. It's so much more fun.
I wanted to just kind of hone in and wrap things up. And so for the kid who's just 7, 8 years old and just bit somebody who's feeling shame, for the parent who's also ashamed that their kid just bit somebody, for the teacher, for the therapist who has a kid that's wasting his time, doesn't want to be there. What can you share with us? What's a message that you feel like you're confident that can really be hopeful for others?
Not everyone is skilled in expressing themselves in all the ways that you're able to express yourself, and understanding in what ways you, like myself, understanding the ways that I expressed myself and ways I was comfortable expressing myself, and understanding the ways I wasn't comfortable expressing myself allowed me, one, to express myself in those ways that I was comfortable doing so, and also work on the skills in order to express myself in other ways, so that when the ways that I was used to expressing myself, when those ways weren't available to me, when those tools weren't available, or I wasn't in an environment that allowed for that, I could still get things off my chest and not feel that explosion, that sense of buildup and explosion.
So what I'm hearing also is that if somebody in somebody's care, like a child in a parent's care, if we're noticing that the kid doesn't have space to express themselves, know that there is an environment for them to express themselves. Just a matter of just finding that right.
Send them down to me. We'll figure out if mine's the right spot.
It's possible. Yeah. Dove has a practice here in Crown Heights where, like I said in the intro, like you're helping adults and adult men and boys with classes and things like that. How can somebody? Is there a way we could just easily say, how does somebody get a hold of you?
Instagram is probably one of the best ways. Okay, Instagram, cool. Or if you don't have Instagram, text me. I can put my number out here. It's okay.
We could also put it on the thing.
All right, so we'll
what's the Instagram thing?
Instagram is Magen Hamelech. That's Magen, which is shield, and Hamelech, which is Hamelekh.
Oh, okay.
Instead of CH, because people that don't know will say Melech, and it's not Melech, it's Melech. So Magen, which means shield of the king. And that's the name of the school also. Beautiful. Is the Shield of the King.
I'm so happy we did this. I'll be honest.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Because this is unique. We haven't done anything like this. Like we've heard like people share about therapy and this and different things, but most of it is inside a room and talking to somebody. Yeah. And here is another channel, a somatic way of working through emotional overload. So I'm so happy we did this. And my son is in your
we're he's really good. Yeah. I can tell he's practicing with you at home because he comes in, he's like ready to do it. He's like volunteers to show off, like what the demonstrate and stuff. It's really good.
On behalf of all of us, Neshamos and the community, we thank you so much for coming here and courageously sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening. Please share your feedback by emailing us at podcast@neshamos.org. We hope you'll be back for the next episode of the Neshamos podcast. This is Moshe Chanan wishing you a healthy and a meaningful day.